Tonight, we have the libertarian view. We're still trying to find out if there's more than one libertarian in the area. But why don't we start with an introduction?
Hi, I'm Michael Soares. I'm a member of the Republican Town Committee.
Now, how does that fit in with being a libertarian?
So if you think of like the Republican Party, like the big tent of the Republican Party, you have conservatives, you have libertarians, you have a lot of different segments of the Republican Party, and I consider myself part of the Rand Paul section of the Republican Party. I'm libertarian-ish, I'm libertarian leaning, but I still believe in the big tent of the Republican Party.
Now, are there Democrat libertarians?
There are, and to some respect, the Bernie Sanders section of the.
So libertarians are socialists?
They're not socialists, but that's probably the closest sect of the Democratic Party. They definitely, in my opinion, fit better with the Republican Party.
Well, I mean, all kidding aside, I've always said I have a hard time distinguishing between, in Massachusetts, a conservative Democrat and a liberal Republican.
Right.
They seem to be in that middle area. I mean, if you get up to the square states, you can tell a red person from a blue person very cleanly.
Right, and people think that political ideology is a linear line, right? You're either left or right. You're liberal or conservative, and really there are a lot of different levels of dimension. I mean, for instance, we often talk about like hawks in Congress. John McCain is a hawk. Lindsey Graham is a hawk. They believe in using the strong arm of the U.S. military to spread our influence. And then you have people like Rand Paul and Ron Paul who believe, in letting other countries do what they do and not get involved unless it directly affects American lives. Then we don't get involved in those foreign affairs. And for instance, Bernie Sanders, he kind of falls into that category where he believes in leaving other countries alone, where Hillary Clinton is more of a John McCain on the Democratic side, who would use the U.S. military for influence around the world.
Well, what would she use? I mean, I think of Benghazi. Doesn't seem like she was using a lot of the military.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's definitely a misstep there, but she's not the type of Democrat that would say, let's stay out of this, conflict, where Bernie Sanders is, where, Ron Paul and Rand Paul would have said, let's stay out of this conflict.
Well, it's hard to fault a Rand Paul when he says, before you cut aid to Americans, you got to cut aid to foreign nations.
Right, and that's.
I got a hard time because philosophically, if I got to cut from somebody, doesn't seem like I want to cut from Americans.
Right, and so that's kind of like on the fiscal side, right? There's why would we donate, or why do we donate essentially billions of dollars every year of foreign aid. That's what we call it, foreign aid. It's basically bribes to foreign countries like the Saudis and we have bases in Bahrain and Qatar, and all of them, we give them lots and lots of foreign aid.
But now you turn around and say, I mean, the Japanese decades ago invented string aid, where it's like, I'm going to give you money, but you got to spend it on Japanese products. I mean, some of the aid I see, okay, we're going to give you aid, but you got to buy U.S. military products.
Yeah, but it's still, so essentially what you're saying is, we're buying all these military products and we're giving it to you. It's like me buying a new car and then giving you the car.
Yeah, I want to keep people employed in my district.
Yeah.
We make the Lockheed Model X.
But so whose money is that? That's the American taxpayer's money, and you're using it for something other than the benefit of the taxpayer. So, I mean...
But people argue you're benefiting the taxpayer because you're employing them.
Are you really I mean, so if I take $10 from you and then hire you for $8, have I really benefited you?
That's the other side. Am I really helping the economy if I'm sort of propping it up.
Yeah, the government never creates wealth. It takes wealth from individuals, gives it to other individuals, and takes a cut. It essentially ends up as waste.
A bureaucratic cut.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you got to, I mean, when you think about the size of government, I mean, when we lived in Washington, I always loved the term Beltway Shuffle. When the Democrats controlled Congress and the White House, they expanded government so everybody lived inside the Beltway. Republicans came in, they shrunk everybody inside the Beltway and hired them all as consultants. So they moved outside the Beltway. But you kept saying, but did we get smaller?
Right. And again, it's all this bureaucracy and, for instance, the Obamacare website. Here we are, we're spending $1 billion on healthcare when really what it is they use that money to design a website to help people get healthcare for a website that barely even worked. You know what I mean? It's.
But now you talk about healthcare, hot issue. Trump's going to come in, and I have to admit, I'm kind of disappointed that the Republicans had, 7 years shooting at Obamacare? Now they got the gun and the bullets, and they don't have a plan ready.
Well, it's easy to criticize the plan and say, this is horrible, right? This is absolutely dreadful. We need to get rid of it. It's another to say, well, now we got to hash out a deal to get something, so it's easy to get a bunch of congressmen to say, let's vote to say that this is bad.
Right.
It's a whole nother story to say, well, now we have to replace it with something. So now we need to actually agree on what we are going to replace it with.
And I had a problem with
that's
that repeal and replace.
Yeah, you want to
replace and repeal.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're going to do. Let's put that into action.
Well, and the argument is Obamacare is so bad that nothing is better than what we have for Obamacare. And then later, we can work out and hash out a plan to fix some of the shortfalls of the original system. And before we go on, what drives me nuts is we talk a lot about how we pay for insurance and how we pay for this, but we don't talk about how we will drive down the costs. Everyone's just worried. People aren't worried about how much healthcare costs. They're worried about who's paying for it. And that's why healthcare keeps ballooning, 10,
well,
15, 20%
that false
a
term
year.
called medical inflation.
Oh, it's horrible.
And it's like, what the? There's inflation,
Yeah.
period. Now you say medical inflation is only 6%.
Right.
Well, wait a minute, that's 3 times inflation. Why should I feel good about it?
6% for medical inflation is really good, and it's sad.
Well, I understand because it's been 10.
Because normally we get 10, 15, 20% inflation.
But that's like saying it's the most beautiful warthog of the bunch.
But
it's still an ugly warthog.
And you're right, but the thing is, our political leaders do not go after health care costs. They go after health insurance costs, and that's where we really break down.
Michael, you hear that people are going to get stung. And I look at the plans and I say, okay, they've come to you and said, the most you can afford is $150 a month. So as a government, we're going to subsidize the difference between what you can afford and what the insurance companies charge. So then I hear the insurance companies are raising their rates 40%. We're not raising your premium out of your pocket 40%.
The subsidy went up 80%.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
I can still only afford $150.
Right.
Now, instead of costing $500 a month, it costs $800. Well, the government's got to pick it up.
Yeah, and because your costs are fixed, you don't care. You use all the health care, you reach your full deductible, and that's it. And it's a horrible system. I mean, I always said that, look, healthcare insurance should be like homeowners insurance. If I hit a hammer through a window, I'm not going to use insurance to replace that window. It's a small cost. But if a fire, catastrophic fire burnt down my house, of course I'm going to use the insurance. In the same way, people shouldn't be using health insurance every time they get a cold or a flu or something minor. They should be using it for when, they have a heart attack or they get cancer or something major medical that there's no way they could have planned for.
But what do you do when people say, but some people can't afford anything? Are you going to deny them?
And we, as a society, have made social security nets for all those types of situations. That doesn't mean that it doesn't work for 97% of the people. Just like some people can, some students can't afford school lunch. That doesn't mean you give everybody free lunch. It means you subsidize those children that cannot afford the lunch.
Do you give any credence to the conspiracy theorists in Cambridge who say Obamacare was the first step in single payer because they knew it was designed in a way that could never be self-sustaining?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ultimate goal, right? For certain, there's definitely a segment of the Democratic Party that wants a European-style single-payer system. And there's also a segment of Democrats that really wanted this to work. But it doesn't.
Well, I'll tell you, I lived in France for 4 years. I thought socialized medicine was the best thing that ever happened because we had Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah.
We didn't have
You went to the front of the line.
Right. The minute we walked in,
yeah,
bang, we were taken care of immediately.
right.
Friends of my darling bride, same condition. They'd go in, well, you have to wait 3-4 months. She'd go in and she hurt her back. Well, the French believed you should get a back rub, massage, whenever you go in for whatever they do to crack your back and do that, because it increased compliance. And they were right.
Right.
You're getting a free massage, people would not miss. But all Sharon had to do is call, and they'd hear the accent, and they'd say, well, how do you pay? Blue Cross Blue Shield? And they said, tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah. And
her friend Stella, same day, she had hurt her back. Oh, we can fit you in 4 months.
Right. And that's the thing, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the contractor's circle, but at each point of or contractor's triangle, each point of the triangle you have good, you have cheap, and you have fast. You can only pick one line though. Either you're going to get good health care and it's going to be cheap, but it's not going to be fast. Or you can get it fast and cheap, but it's not going to be good. Or you can get it good and fast and it's not going to be cheap.
Well,
you have this, it's the same thing with healthcare. So they want a single payer system to control the costs, but then it's not going to be fast.
So where do you go? Realistically, when people tell me that they wouldn't take care of everybody, I laugh. Because you have Jeff Hopkins, who runs the emergency department here at Milford, he'll tell you he's need blind. If somebody needs help, he doesn't ask them, what's the limit on your visa?
Right.
Or do you have a visa?
Right.
They walk in the door, he and his staff take care of them.
And that, as a society, we decided that's how we handle patients. You need care, you're going to get it. On the back end of that, that's where things fall through, right? So certain people, you need care, you get it, and you get a reasonable bill, and you pay it. With other people, you get your care because you need it, and you get this bill in the mail that's outrageous. I have 2 kids, so they're constantly something is going. My son put a Lego in his ear and we couldn't get it out. So here we go, ER. So first we get a bill from the hospital for $500, but then what's funny is because no other service do they bill you like this. Then you get a bill from the doctors for their services. It's like you going out for a cup of coffee. And they're like, well, it's $1 for the coffee, but then it's $1 for the barista to serve you the coffee.
And the people who clean the Dunkin' Donuts.
And then they itemize the coffee. Well, it's 30 cents for sugar, 20 cents for cream. And it's like, this is, how do we
But
run this
even
system?
the insurance companies, though, think about what's happening here in Milford. All of a sudden, we have urgent care. Why? Because the insurance companies have said, we're not paying. We're going to make it so that you have a $250 or $500 deductible if you go to the ER.
Right.
So you better be needing
An ER.
ER.
Right.
Otherwise, you can go to
the
urgent care, and it's the same $20, $30 deductible.
Yeah, that's cheap.
Well, whatever it is.
Even urgent care is in the usually 200. Well,
Okay,
depending on
but
your plan.
no matter what,
Everyone's got a different plan, right? So
it's much cheaper than going to the ER.
yes.
So they are modifying behavior, but the problem.
The problem is it's happening at a bureaucratic level. It's not happening. It's not the consumer that's driving this change.
No, it's absolutely a bureaucratic decision.
Right. And that's where my problem is I much rather, like I said, I'll have catastrophic health, allow me to have catastrophic health insurance and nothing else. And I would much rather choose that plan. It'd be infinitely cheaper because most likely they're going to take my money and not pay me any benefits. It's like I said, it's more like homeowners insurance where a lot of people pool in. Most people don't get a payout, but everyone has that insurance just in case. And that's how it should be. It should be a very limited use product. And it would cause people to say, well, why would I get an MRI, in Boston when I can get one here for a quarter of the price?
Yeah.
So, right now it's people, you can't even ask for the price. You go there and you say, well, how much is this going to cost me? They tell you, well, it depends on your insurance.
Yes.
Well, no, that's not what I asked. I asked, how much is it going to cost me? Well, we don't know.
What are you going to charge me? Not what are the costs. The costs are fixed.
Oh, that's a different department. But
No.
you'll have to talk to Billy.
It costs X dollars to do an MRI.
Right.
How much they charge depends on your insurance.
It's totally different, and that's why it causes costs to rise and rise really unchecked.
Now, we'll come back to national, but we always run out of time to talk about local issues.
Right.
Chickens.
Oh, so as you know, I recently tried to sponsor an article at town meeting to allow homeowners on their own property to have up to 4 chickens without asking special permission from the government. And this is one of the reasons why.
And 2 hours of our meeting was taken up debating whether a chicken is a pre-processed McNugget or a pet.
Yeah. Well, you got to ask yourself, how much government has control over your life when you can't even have a few animals in your backyard hurting no one else, but yet they tell you can't have them? Same thing.
Now, I'm allowed, 3 cats or 3 dogs?
Yeah, but why? Who's to say what you are allowed to do? Like,
So if
why
I have a
is
rabbit, one rabbit,
that's illegal unless you have a special permit. A $300 application to apply for a special permit that you may not get.
now if I apply and say I want a wabbit, and they say no wabbits, do I get my $300
No,
back?
of course not.
So,
That's to pay for the application, not for the permit.
so I got $300 invested, hoping that my little fuzzy bunny is legal.
Yeah.
If they say yes, then I have to go get a permit, like a $6 dog license, or
Well, so you apply for the special permit, and if you are approved, you get the permit, but then you have to pay the Worcester Deeds land records to record that permit on your deed.
that I have a rabbit?
That you have a permit to have that rabbit. It's not the rabbit now.
Come on.
It's the permission.
You're making this stuff up.
No, I'm not. This is how bureaucratic our even local government has gotten, that you can't even have. And that's not the worst thing. The other article.
What happens if Fluffy goes to the big rabbit den in the sky?
You still have the permission to have a rabbit. So
I can get another
You can
rabbit.
get another rabbit. You already have the permission to have one rabbit. Now, if you have a permission to have one rabbit, and then you decide, well, Fluffy needs a friend. You have to reapply again, $300, and say, well, now I want 2 rabbits.
If I bought 2 rabbits, odds are there'll be more than 2 rabbits.
Then you better have a number in mind to apply for so that you can always be under that amount.
You're going to have to put rabbits on birth control?
Good luck. Good luck.
But I mean, seriously.
No, but
When I grew up in
yes.
Milford, my mother would buy 2 rabbits in the spring.
Yep.
By the fall,
You'd
we
have
had lots of rabbits.
There you go.
And then she would take care of rabbits, and we had very
You had
traditional rabbit on rice for the whole winter.
yeah. And
That worked
And
till
that-
I was
and
9
that's
when
a
I played with
great-
rabbit.
and that's a great way to not only, I always laugh when people are like, well, don't you need a rooster to get these chickens to lay eggs? It's like, no, they will lay eggs. Like, this is how far disconnected our new generation is to their food. They think,
I thought
I'm
chickens just
hungry,
did
I
la-
go to the
I
store.
thought they just did eggs. I didn't know they needed.
They do. They just
friend to help.
lay eggs regardless,
So
right?
no rooster.
No rooster is required. Now, if you want little chicks, then
Well,
yes,
if you want
of
to make more
course.
chickens.
Yes, of course, you need a rooster. You need a male counterpart. But just the eggs alone, that's half the product of a chicken. You don't need a rooster. They will lay eggs regardless. And it always amazes me how disconnected people are to their food, that they don't know how it works. They don't know, like, that
Now-
bread is grown from, is made from flour, which comes
No, they
from
come from
wheat.
the bread tree. You go and pick a
Yeah,
loaf
exactly.
off the bread tree.
You know, like, where do these things come from? I don't
But
know.
wait a minute. If I want hens, so quiet fowl,
Yes.
I mean, I can see people, candidly, I can see people not wanting their neighbor to have lots of roosters.
In a densely
5:30 in the
populated,
morning.
I could understand, and we do have noise, and this is all part of the libertarian. We believe in, being able to do what doesn't hurt other people. That's part of our, live your life, do no harm. So
Isn't that the
so
Constitution?
no, apparently it's not. But it's funny because a hen makes almost no noise. I mean, they might purr and
Cluck.
Yeah, they make little peeps and little noises. But if you're 100 feet away inside your own house, you will never hear. I mean, cars driving by make more
But no,
noise.
people want hens because they want fresh eggs.
Yeah, sometimes they want
I mean,
fresh.
it can't be economic because I can go down to Shaw's
No, it's
and buy eggs for
absolutely
nothing.
It's very economic. It's so if you have a backyard, they'll eat the bugs, they'll eat the weeds. They'll
But that's not pure. I mean, I'm spending $350.
oh well, if you
By the
add
time-
if you add the cost of the permit, yeah, no, there's no way it's that.
I still got to feed the chicken, right?
The feed is cheap. It's,
But I mean, when I
it's
add
the
it all up,
permit that costs so much.
Going down to Shaw's and buying a dozen eggs.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is, couple bucks.
yeah, $2 for
So
crappy garbage eggs. If you want
there's
good
different eggs.
There's farm fresh eggs. So a lot of people don't know the eggs in a store that you buy are typically already 90 days old. That's why they're refrigerated. Fresh eggs don't need to be refrigerated. And most people who have backyard chickens don't refrigerate their eggs. They brush them off with like a dry cloth. They don't wash them. Dry cloth only, and put it on their counter in like a little basket. And that's where they store them because eggs store very
Eggs
well.
are like chocolate and candy that's 90 days to go through the distribution system.
It takes 90 days between when that hen lays that eggs for the farmer to then ship it to a distributor, then the distributor to
Packs it.
packs it, brings it to the grocery store, and then they stock it on a shelf. You buy it, then put it in your fridge. That process takes about 90 days.
And the eggs taste different.
Eggs are garbage. I mean, first of all, you got to remember, industry laying hens, they're going to be in a cage, maybe 1 to 2 square feet, and that's it for their whole life is going to be this 2 square feet of space eating layer feed. Like literally it's like
what's
eating bread every day, and that's all you eat because that's what they decided.
Well, it's also what's left over from making other animal food.
Yeah.
When they put the meal in, I mean, it's pretty
And then it's
amazing what they
and then
force.
they add calcium supplements in their because they want
In
harder
some places,
eggs.
antibiotics to keep them from.
Right.
I mean, let's face it. We send our kids to an incubator called daycare.
Mm-hmm.
One kid gets a disease, and they
Right.
share it. I would imagine fowl are the same way. If
It would be horrible if you didn't give them, because they're so in such close proximity and there's so many of them.
So now you hear about this ethical treatment of fowl. What is it? You let them run around?
You'd build a coop with a little run, and
No, I'm saying industrial. From a commercial point of view.
Oh, from a commercial point of view, no, they never leave. So our humane law is that they have to be in a cage big enough so that they can at least stand up and turn around.
That's it?
That is as humane as it gets, and that was
I thought the humane thing
controversial.
was they got fields
No,
to run in and
absolutely
be
not.
happy chickens. And
No, because what was going on was so many, not just chickens, but like pigs especially, were packed in so tightly that they couldn't even turn around. So that, they literally stood, and maybe they couldn't even stand, right? It was that compact that they were putting these animals in. So that's why they said, well, it needs to at least be able to have enough room where the animal can stand up, turn around.
I remember being amazed when I was out at the Mayo Clinic. We were doing porcine aortic valve recellularization. And they told me that the valves aren't that expensive. They get them any amount they need. And I was, how is that possible? They said, well, you ever heard of a thing called spam? I didn't know spam still existed. Well, the Hormel plant was a few hours down the road, and they processed 19,000. And these are not little piggies. These are Mr. Pig.
Right.
19,000 pigs came in every day and were put into little spam cans going out.
It's horrible.
But you start, no wonder you can't get near one of these places. You get within 5 miles and you get a fragrance.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying, so if, that's another benefit, when you have backyard eggs, that means you're reducing the environmental impact of your food, because there's a huge impact to the environment when you have industrial food. You have the fuel to run the trucks, you have the coal that burns to make the electricity to run the plant. I mean, there's all these.
So we're back today, though, to $350 if I want to have anything but 3 puppies and kitty cats?
Exactly. And I think that's wrong. As a libertarian, I think you should be able to run a backyard homestead, as long as it doesn't have a significant impact on anyone else, like noise, smell.
No, I can see if you had a dozen chickens or 2 dozen.
I could understand if you had 3 dozen cows in a quarter acre lot and you had a pile of manure in your front yard that was
the neighbors wouldn't
emitting
be
a
happy.
fragrance to the whole neighborhood. I could understand the government having an interest in limiting that. But to say you can't have 4 chickens in your backyard,
Or a rabbit.
or one whatever the case may be, that hurts nobody. I mean,
I got a real problem trying to figure out how one rabbit is a problem.
yeah.
I mean, rabbits don't really.
Or make their special permit free. You say, well, I would like to have 1 rabbit. They evaluate the circumstances of your application. They say, yeah, that should be no significant impact on your neighbors.
How can a bunny have a significant impact?
But whatever the case may be, if someone's going to apply for 10 chickens, 12 chickens, at some point they're going to say, well, based on the circumstances of your lot, your property, your neighbors, how close they are to you, we think that that's too many, or that's inappropriate. I wouldn't want to, like I said, I wouldn't want to live.
So I guess saying a puma is a kitty cat wouldn't quite count.
Oh, well, it's a cat, it's a feline. I don't know. I think if you were a constitutional lawyer, you might be able to make that argument.
It's just a big cat.
It's a big cat.
Now, any next steps, or are we giving up on the chickens?
Oh, I'm not giving up on the chickens. My next step is to try to make the application free.
Okay.
Or at least reduce it to $1.
Well, that would eliminate the argument of we're doing this because.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That
Well, and that's what I heard from town meeting, because there was another article before mine that wanted to prohibit people from even being able to apply, which I thought was crazy. Here you can't have it unless you have special permission, and now they want to make it so you can't even ask for permission, you just flat out denied. And what I heard from town meeting is we don't want to circumvent the special application process. We want people to be able to apply. So what I'm going to attempt next time is to say, okay, we'll keep that process in place. Let's just make it affordable, so that my $20 worth of
$10 or
my $20 worth of hen isn't costing me $300 or $350 to apply to have.
well, hopefully it won't take up 2.5 hours of
I hope not.
town meeting again. Another local issue that is starting to heat up, water company.
You want to talk about that tonight, huh? How much time do we have?
Yeah. But I mean, seriously, when you look as a libertarian, can you really support making government bigger?
Yes, and I'll tell you
How
why.
so?
I'll tell you why. Because it's a monopoly. The government has essentially issued a monopoly to the Milford Water Company. You can't say, oh, the Milford Water Company is going to jack my rate, so therefore I'm going to buy my water from Bellingham Water Company. No, I don't think such company exists, but
No, understood. There is no, it's not
there's
like
no
electric where you
It's
got
not
a
like
couple.
electric where you can say, I'm going to choose my electric provider. Now, I can't select my electric distributor, but that's something, right? Cable.
At least I have some choice. Cable, I do have Verizon.
I can choose
Comcast.
Xfinity with Comcast. I can choose Verizon
Or
Fios.
DirecTV.
DirecTV. I can choose not to have it at all. You can't do that with water. I can choose not to have TV at all.
Yeah, tell that to your children and see if you're not out in the. You'll be with the chickens.
Yeah, actually, when we were saving up money, we went a year without cable. We had little bunny ears, and we got like 6 channels. But we did have Netflix. So, there's another, technology kind of now
Well, I mean, it's
cutting
like
the cord isn't so hard because you have
phones.
these little
I'm
technical.
amazed at the millennials, how many of them don't have phones anymore.
They don't have landlines.
Landlines, because they carry their cell phones.
Exactly.
I mean, even my family.
My family, we don't have a landline. My
Really?
wife, I have a cell phone. My wife has a cell phone, and that's it.
But now, the problem I have is I'm not going to be tethered. This is not Babylon 5 where you have your comm link glued to you. So if I put my phone down, either I carry it around the house, or if I put it down, I can't hear it if I'm on the other side of the house.
Well, I put it in my pocket. I mean,
So you carry it around with you?
yeah, put it in it's in my pocket. It vibrates, or whatever.
My darling bride and ungrateful offspring all do that. They carry the phone everywhere they go in the house.
Or you leave the room without it. I mean, it's not that big a deal. If anything's really important, your wife has a phone, your daughter has a phone. Someone will alert you that there's something going on.
But with water, no choice.
Water, there's no choice. So you have to buy, and this is what drives me nuts. So because it's a monopoly, and the government realizes that monopoly is bad, they said, well, okay, what we'll do is we'll make it a regulated monopoly. We'll tell them how much profit they can make. That doesn't mean they can't make a profit. In fact, they can make a good amount of, they're safe because times of recession, boom, no matter what.
But you know where, I have a problem is you're saying a reasonable return on investment, let's say 6%.
They're allowed 12%.
12%. We'll argue whether that's reasonable or not, but let's say 12%. So the more I spend,
Yep. The more you
more
waste,
12%, the less efficient I am, the more I make.
Yeah.
Why do I not understand the logic?
So it actually benefits them to spend more money because then they have more justification to say,
charge more.
we need a bigger rate increase because look at all our
Well,
our
if I'm charging you
expenses.
$10 million to the town,
And before we move on, especially when your expenses are to pay other companies
well,
that
but
you
I was
own.
to say, I got a $10 million or $100 budget
Yeah.
for everything I charge. I make 12%, I make $12. if I can bring that up to 120, 130, I make $14.
Exactly.
Wait a minute.
And if that extra $30 is going to a company
Now,
you own,
I love the idea that we're going to build a new plant, and I'm going to evaluate who's the best vendor to provide the plant. Number one is me. Number two is who cares. Number three is I'm ignoring them.
right.
Right? You sit there and say, no, wait a minute.
All these proposals are crap because they're not me.
But I'm not going to tell me what the others are bidding. Right? I'm not going to give me, my son, my cousin, or, an extension of my company where I get the dividends. I'm not going to give them an unfair advantage by leaning towards them. So, wait a minute. I don't doubt that the water company made a very regulated 12.01%.
Right.
But the construction company that's part of the family of the water company,
It's not.
are they regulated?
Absolutely not.
So what's the...
They can make... A construction company is limited by its customer base. If they want to charge 3 times the market rate, if they have customers to pay them that, they're well in their rights to make that.
So
profit.
I'll go into the room with the mirror and say, do you think I'm charging a fair price? Oh, you do? I agree.
Do you think I'm pretty? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
So, even as a libertarian, I recognize the special circumstance of a utility and say, that should be something where instead of I always prefer the free market when appropriate. But in this circumstance where there's a utility, your check and balance, you're a monopolistic utility. Your check and balance are the voters. So you have your government-owned utility controlled by an elected board of commissioners, and that's how we run our sewer department, and it works very well. And we haven't had a sewer rate increase.
8 years?
7, 8 years. So you can't say that the private sector is always better. The private sector is always better when it's free competition, free market is always better than a
when
regulated.
it's unregulated competition, then market will determine. The market will determine who is the best provider.
Whether it's quality or price, they will decide.
One way or another.
They will decide what the best product is.
I mean, you go through all the equipment, and all the surveys always come out with quality, service, price is third or fourth, as long as it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But, I start looking, again, we're living in 2% inflation years, and 50% increase in my water bill?
Yeah,
30%?
So they just announced that they want to increase it 30%.
But I mean, here's the...
so that was... So 5 years ago, it was an 80% request. They ended up getting like 55%. Ooh, boo-hoo. And then before that, they asked for a 50% increase and got a 30-something percent
if I wanted to be open-minded and say, well, they had to build a plant, they had to change the infrastructure, la, la, la. Okay.
That was to fix all their defects of their company.
But Michael, they did it. So you got one bolus, one big increase to take care of all the investment. Mm-hmm. Now I look and say, for the last 4 years, what's the big thing that happened that they now need another 30%?
It's their annual 12% every year compounded. They want more.
Right. And there's the issue I have is you're rewarding bad management.
Oh, absolutely. So we have a regulator, government regulator, but it doesn't reward good management. It doesn't it doesn't say, well, listen, you run a horrible business, therefore we're not going to give you the 12% rate of return that we give everyone else.
But I mean, think about it. We've been fortunate in Milford. One, we have people who are very vested in the town running our departments. But as a FinCom, most influential, powerless people in the town hall. I mean, we really don't get to say anything. We can propose. But when you look at town meeting, which is the power, they've never supported penalizing somebody for good management. You don't go to somebody and say, oh, you were able to turn back 50 grand, 100 grand this year? So we're going to cut your budget next year by 120.
Absolutely not. We've never run that way.
You know, you sit there and say, wait a minute, we want to reward good management. And a
Right.
few times, I can remember over the last decade, oh God, we've been on the FinCom forever, that people have come and said, look, I'm going to squeeze, I'm going to do this, I'm going to save 80,000. I'd really like to increase the efficiency of my HIVAC. Can I spend 20 of the 80 if I save 80? And we said, well, wait a minute, this is going to benefit us long term. Yes.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the right decision. When I see us rewarding the water company,
For poor behavior. You know, the reason why they built that new plant was because someone was cheating with lab results of the quality of the water, got a bunch of people sick, caused a huge lawsuit, and now they're
the
forced
water
to
company
build.
couldn't do basic dilutions.
Oh, no,
I mean, they
it
missed
was,
by an order of magnitude.
it
Come
was
on.
intentional, you know, incompetence. You know, it was.
Well, I won't go that far, but I mean, incompetence.
Yeah.
You can't do basic chemistry. You ought not be in the chem lab.
Well, it.
But now let me ask you a fundamental question. If I was sitting there as the owner of the water company, do I want this deal to go through with Milford?
You'll have to. I mean, who knows, right? So.
What advantage do I have for this deal going through right now?
Well, they might want to sell out. No, I will tell you, because we just discussed all the benefits of being in the utility business. You know, being a regulated industry with a guaranteed rate of return. There are companies out there buying utilities.
But
up.
see, that's what I'm thinking. We negotiated, and you can argue it's good, bad, $60 million.
Yes.
Everything I'm hearing is companies this size are being bought for 80. If I was the management of the water company, I'm beholden to my stockholders,
Sure, and I agree with that. Yes,
and that's their job.
that's their job.
But I can sit there and say, oh, Michael, blow the deal up, please, because I'll go out tomorrow
If
and sell
that's-
it for 80.
If that's what they wanted to do, I think they're being a little foolish requesting the 30% increase, because now that just makes it more attractive for the town to want to buy it, because we can make the numbers work. I mean, 30% increase in the revenue that we use, we can definitely
All
make
of a
those
sudden,
numbers
the
work.
hydrant fees and everything start looking pretty good.
Yeah, it's
I just can't fathom why they wouldn't be happy either to stay as is and milk the cow,
Yep,
or, okay, you don't buy the cow, he'll buy the cow for 20 million more.
exactly. So either way, they're going to be very happy. But you know, we'll find out. I
and,
mean,
you know,
there is that risk. We don't buy the water company; someone else does, and then they go to those same regulators and say, "Well, look at all the money we just spent.
We just spent
to,
$80 million,
to
we
buy
gotta
water.
recoup it.
We need to recoup it. So therefore, we need a 50% rate increase. I mean,
Again.
that is the risk we run by not buying the water company.
And it's funny because we've heard a lot of criticism that the selectmen aren't sharing the data. But yet, by law, they have to keep private the majority of all the information.
There's a lot of executive sessions, and
But they don't have a choice. It's not like
sensitive
the
information.
selectmen want to hide it.
Right, and it would weaken our negotiating position if we tell everybody, well, we can afford $63 million.
Michael, years ago when we were negotiating with Comcast, it used to drive me nuts that I could not go into executive session. So I had to have a discussion and tell Comcast, here's my strategy, here's what we can do. And we didn't think they listened?
Exactly, right? Yeah. It's when you tell, you know, it's like buying a house and you say, you have that pre-approval letter and you say,
Yeah, I can afford-
I'm pre-approved for up to $300,000. Now I know your asking price is $280, but this is all I can afford, honestly, you know?
Yeah, no, you're not, because I know. As we move out and you look at what's happening in Washington, Libertarian view is
Regarding what exactly?
general.
Oh, I mean, there's a whole lot of going on, right? And a lot of it. So one thing I cannot stand is all the media has become malicious. Honestly, it's been, you know, did the Russians collude? Did Trump collude with the Russians? You know, is he under investigation? Is he about to go to prison? Is Kushner about to go to prison? It's like it's like a soap opera, and it's time to just let's talk about some issues, please. And you have these things like the Kathy Griffin incident, and people are becoming, it's ugly.
Well, the Shakespeare in the Park in New York City.
Oh yeah, that was, oh.
Now, wait a minute. If you had done that to the previous president.
Yeah. You'd be run out of town.
And rightfully so.
And rightfully so. It's inappropriate. I mean, there was a rodeo clown that wore an Obama mask because, it's a president's mask, right? People wear president's masks all the time. And so he used that while he was doing his job, which is to attract the bull's attention. And, people were like, well, you're calling the president a clown. And he got fired for that. And here you have Kathy Griffin, who had, depicted a decapitated president, and it's still a CNN.
Or a stabbed president in Shakespeare.
Yeah, and that was I believe, a Time Warner production.
Well, and you turn around and then they're surprised when places like Bank of America or, some of the big sponsors say, we really don't want to sponsor that anymore.
Right, well, and the other thing, the more dangerous thing, is you never know what person, like what happened with the congressman, the baseball team, Scalise, where someone could take that literally to say we should attempt to assassinate politicians. And that's what he essentially tried to do.
Do you buy that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I could watch all of the zombie movies
but
ever made. I don't think I'd
you're
go
a sane
bite somebody.
person.
Don't ask my wife.
Yeah, you're a sane person. I mean, that's the risk you run when you run. It's okay to criticize. It's okay to be, critical. But when it becomes,
but it's almost obsessive now.
It's totally upset. It's a 24/7 attack. It almost becomes, I'm doing this to save the country. I am shooting this Republican because I'm going to save 7 million people who are going to lose their health care. I mean, that's what they were essentially, when they go up there and say, repeal and replace will kill 7 million people, that's the message they're telling that not quite sane person.
Yeah, and it's funny because I listen to Fox News. Then I listen to CNN, knowing that somewhere in between
is the right.
I mean, if I only listen to Fox News, then every liberal in the world is the scourge of the earth and the problems. I listen to CNN, every Republican is
And while you're
Satanistic.
watching CNN, there's liberal bias. And while you're watching Fox News, there's a conservative bias. So you, being a well-rounded individual that takes in content with a little bit of grain of salt, with a little bit of objectivity, you're fine. But some people, where they get all their news from one source and they're not being objective at all, I mean, that's where people get crazy.
Well, I mean, look at this recent congressional race. $50 million for
chump change.
a 6th district of nowhere land.
A record campaign spending for a district, for Congress, a House level position.
$50 million.
For a special election. It was absolutely insane. I don't even know what to say. And it attracted all the, I mean, it was such an important seat because the Democrats wanted to say,
it's a referendum on Trump.
It's a referendum on Trump because this has been a district that's always voted Republican, and here we took that seat. Wait till 2018, we're going to blow them out.
It's all about the midterm elections.
It's all about that because they want the House back. But, I mean, the last 5 special elections, they lost every time.
Well, they've gone 0 for 5, so. But
because you've created this villain in a person to the point where you're comparing him to Hitler.
Well, yeah, but
it turns people off, and you're saying he's not as bad as Hitler.
When I remember Obama being elected, the day after he was elected, I mean, I was not an Obama supporter. Mm-hmm. But the day after he was elected, I was a presidential supporter. I did not want that man to fail because he's going to take us all down with him.
Yeah.
So, if nothing else, respect the position. And as I start looking.
The gentleman like behavior in Congress is dead.
Wow.
It is no longer sportsmanlike, if you will. It is cutthroat.
But both parties, I hate
it's
to
on both
say
sides. It is.
but, it's easy to say, oh, it's those blue people, they're bad.
And that's
It's
one of the
red
reasons
people, they're bad.
why libertarians are the highest growing party, is because we're not
I
malicious.
thought because they had Rand Paul and 2 people, so you add one, it's up 33%.
So this last election, we had the highest third-party candidate voting of any other previous election. Now, Ross Perot did get a higher percentage, but he was running as an independent, not as a
Right.
party affiliate. So Gary Johnson got 5% of the vote, and that's small
I
when you
never
think
quite understood that. Why didn't they run Weld with Gary Johnson
not-
behind him?
that's in the
That
past.
would have made me
That's
feel
in
better.
the past.
Okay.
But another thing I wanted to point out is I think libertarians handed Trump the election because Gary Johnson was running close to 10, 11, 12% in the polls. So when push came to shove, when they got in there and they said, I like Johnson, but he's not going to win,
Who am I going to throw my vote to?
who am I going to throw?
But
The vast majority of libertarians went Republican versus Democrat.
But I've got a problem when I read about these anti-fascists who are trying to deny people their rights under that pesky First Amendment.
Oh, yeah,
And I sit there and scratch my head and say, wait a minute. If you are anti-fascist, you should be. I'm not saying I agree with what you say, but shouldn't I agree with you have the right to say it?
And I think we're losing a lot of that. A lot of people are using, especially a lot of young people, are using these terms that they hear their leaders say, and I don't think they know what they mean. Like when they hold signs that say, "I love communism," do you know what communism is? Have you seen Cuba? Have you seen Venezuela? Do you like?
No, I'm sorry. I used to go to the Soviet Union twice a month. I lived it.
Right.
And you're like, no.
So I think a lot of it is people don't quite understand what it is.
Well, it's like saying I'm an anti-fascist.
Yeah.
But I'm protesting your right to speak.
Right.
Well, wait a minute. That's kind of an oxymoron.
Exactly. And
You know,
that's part of what makes this country great, right? Is that person can say, really disgusting things that you would totally disagree with, but he has the right to say it.
First Amendment guarantees your right to be stupid in my mind.
Exactly.
I may think you're stupid. I may think everything
Let
you say.
him show the world he's an idiot.
Oh, but the fact
her.
is, if I want to have the right to voice my opinion, and you may think I'm stupid, then I've got to defend your right.
And what the problem? So while we're talking about this, is Facebook. You might have heard of it. It's this big thing. A lot of people are doing it. They're launching an effort to reduce fake news. And what I'm worried about is who's going to decide
Who's going to decide it's fake?
what is fake news.
Now, I can understand their initiative to limit some of this crazy.
the hoaxes.
The
some
hoaxes or-
celebrity died when he's fine.
Yeah, or just
Yeah.
when they made up things like Hillary ran a brothel or something.
Oh, that was disgusting.
I mean, that's just,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's
That-
just not.
You're absolutely right.
Or the people showing decapitation,
Yeah.
on YouTube or whatever. I can see there's a,
But
it's
the
like,
question is, where do you draw the line? So when someone says, well, I believe that the climate is changing. We'll talk about climate change, right? I believe that the climate is changing, but I don't think it's man-made. Is that fake news?
no, because it's your opinion. Okay, I disagree with you.
That's how I see it. Is my.
I disagree with you.
But will Facebook see that as fake news?
Well, but years ago, we wrestled with what is pornography. And, the famous line, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And we drew lines like anything to deal with children is wrong.
Right.
Okay. It's not First Amendment protected. If you're
Right.
hurting a child,
Absolutely.
it's wrong.
But then you run the
But then
risk.
the gray area,
You have a 2-year-old who's running naked in the sprinkler and you snap a photo. Is that pornography? Right? You know, it's a cute little 2-year-old. So that's...
and again, that's
It's-
where I
it's a
get to a point of
double-edged
saying,
sword.
am I hurting, am I doing
if
anything?
you-
No.
Right. So that's why I want to be very cautious about what Facebook is doing, because I would hate for it to turn into, to evolve.
Well, I mean, look at Berkeley and places where they said, we don't want conservatives speaking on campus. I mean, I think they had 11
Did
Republicans.
they actually say that?
Well, they shut down a conservative speaker.
They did, and
Because
but
of
they
security.
Used, they used the excuse it was for security purposes.
Now, what would happen if Elizabeth Warren went there and wanted to speak, and you shut her
don't
down
know.
for security?
I mean, people should be allowed to speak. I can't stand 90% of what that woman says, but
But wait a minute.
she has the absolute
She's an
right
American.
and a senator, and she has the absolute right
To speak.
To speak. And if someone's a journalist or a columnist and has an opinion, and he is invited, by the way, invited to speak,
Well, yeah,
Why-
that I can see. You
why
can't go
should-
force yourself.
right? But he was invited to speak. They were going to allow him to speak. People who disagreed with him said, "I will commit violence if you allow him to speak." And they said, "Well."
But
You-
isn't that what they came after Trump, saying you're inciting violence in your speeches?
Right.
So we don't want it. Okay, well you can't
they-
speak out of both orifices simultaneously.
Yeah, they were-
You got to do one or the other.
They were claiming he was inciting violence among his supporters, and then they find secret hidden video of Democrats organizing people to be violent at his
We're
rallies.
Back to Gorsuch. Oh, this was terrible. Really? If
I
I,
really
say
like it.
Bork, no, but if I say Bork, does that bring back? Well, at least there we held hearings, but we said we weren't going to do anything with them. Both parties should be ashamed of themselves.
What I like about Gorsuch is he's flat out said, "My opinion doesn't matter. What matters is the letter of the law." That's it.
But again, what worries me is if I'm Trump and you tell me no matter who you bring up, I'm never going to vote for him. I'm never going to try and get him approved.
You're gonna
Guess what? The next time, I ain't picking somebody in the middle.
No.
I'm going to pick somebody way off to the side and say, fine. All the Democrats will say no. All the Republicans will say yes.
Yep.
And Pence will say yes.
and that's all you need.
And then all of a sudden you end up with 4 extremists
You,
on either side.
well, yeah, 8.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
and then you have one guy
Then
who's the
who's
flip.
the party in power that picks the? So it all comes down to one vote.
Exactly.
If you have 4 ultra liberals, 4 ultra conservatives, the one swing vote makes all the decisions.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you for joining. We are calling out to see if there's more than one libertarian in Milford to come on the show.
Let's hope.
But as always, the most important thing is get out, vote, let your opinion be heard, and may, as always, tomorrow be a better day than today. May God bless. Good night, and thanks to our 6 loyal viewers for tuning in.
Thank you.
And one of them may own chickens.
Not too long since I've been home.